Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel. Today continuing the Swamp Thing read-along with Swamp Thing number 48. There has been a lot leading up to this issue. I'm not going to go through everything, so if you want to be completely caught up, go back, watch the previous videos in this series so that you know what the hell is going on. Swamp Thing and John Constantine are confronting the Brujeria to try to prevent them from destroying heaven. Doesn't get more intense than that. We'll jump in looking at the cover. Lots going on the cover. Swamp Thing pulling a man out of some mud, getting attacked by the Invunch, which we've been introduced to earlier. Looks like some members of the Brujeria are attacking Swamp Thing. He's got a spear tip broken off in him. Got some crows and darkness all around. This is a cover by Bissett and John Totleben. But on the interiors, we've only got John Totleben this time around. I think this is the first time in the run he does all the art duties himself, penciling and inking. And I like seeing that. I like seeing him just kind of be able to do all of it. I like this opening page a lot, where we're opening with a couple panels that's probably really easy to draw because there's nothing in them. So yeah, Tatiana Wood just fill in the colors. But we've got a sky, and slowly a murder of crows starts to approach. And before we know it, they're filled the screen completely until it's pitch black. But in that darkness, a match is struck, and we get John Constantine revealed, saying that these cigarettes will be the death of him. But at least that means that nothing else will be. So ever the optimist, that John Constantine. We got our opening, our title spread page here. The name of the issue is A Murder of Crows, written by Alan Moore. Art completely by John Totleben. And John is alone inside this cave. This is where the Brujeria are performing their dark magic to begin this ceremony to launch a spiritual nuke at heaven. And we're going to go a little bit back in time, right before he goes into the cave, to see why he's alone and how we got to this point. Real quick note, John Totleben does an exceptional job in this issue with stuff like this. There's a lot of like engravings and ceremonial looking stuff that we're going to see. And I think he just knocks it out of the park. I think this stuff looks fantastic. But going back a little bit, before they go into the cave, John's friend Judith has shown up, and she wasn't expected. He's asking where is Benjamin and Sister Anne Marie, because he had a specific plan. You know, specific people were going to be accompanying him. The crew from Newcastle, something that he repeatedly refers to throughout this issue and previous ones, which we don't learn about until the actual Hellblazer series premieres. So she shows up here. John was expecting more, but whatever. He'll take what he can get. Little thing to kind of keep an eye on here. They're in this rainforest. She plucks a flower and on the page puts it in the band around her head, in her hair. Why am I pointing that out? Well, you'll see. But before they go into the cave, they're looking for Swamp Thing. And this tree behind them talks. He says, I have been here since yesterday. And sure enough, there he is. I love this look. This was introduced in the previous issue. Since Swamp Thing is in a different place than he usually is, there's different flora, different vegetation. And so he looks very different based on like what he's using to pull himself together. Which is great. And I think it looks good. I love Totlben's rendition of it. I love the almost crown of leaves that's on him there. So the group goes into the cave together, and it's pitch black. Unfortunately, what John didn't realize was that as soon as they enter the cave, it diverges. So they have to split up. So Swamp Thing, his role in this plan is to, go into the green and then reform himself like in the center of the room where the ritual is taking place. He's going to be their big element of surprise, an elemental of surprise, haha, and knock them off balance. And then John and his human crew will come in and stop things their way. But they have to split up. John goes on his own. That's how he ends up stuck in the darkness, because he dropped his box of matches. His flashlight battery went out, and Judith and the other guy, I forget what his name is, they go in the other direction. While John is in the darkness, he starts to see a light in the distance. Lots of darkness in this issue. A lot of playing with things falling into shadow, things coming out of shadow. John sees that here. A light is growing, and the Invunch attacks him. And again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It is an actual word. Maybe it's Invunke. I don't know. But anyway, John gets attacked, and he gets knocked out, which we get great Tatiana Wood colors showing, the action. The red to indicate that he's been hit with a heavy blow, and he starts to fade. His Totleben captures his eyes closing there. He slumps out of frame. The last thing he sees before he goes unconscious is just the vague outline of the Invunch's face, which is nightmarish as it is, but even more so like this. But again, that fade into darkness. And then we get Swamp Thing, who's in the green right now. And actually, before I mention that, I love this. Totlebin's ink's so good, so good. The thin to thick lines, and I love the way that these hands are like just over each other. Like this really feels like a 3D effect to me. It's just so cool. But Swamp Thing's got some trouble in the green. An ad for The Dark Knight Returns. It's going to start coming out soon. The Frank Miller series. That's pretty cool. We're in 1986 now, so that's really important year for comics. But Swamp Thing is not able to get into the ritual ground because there has been magic. There's a magic barrier in place, so he's not actually able to find any vegetation to slip his consciousness into to build a new body in there. So he's wondering, like, what am I going to do? I guess I just have to wait down there in the dark. And again, we're fading into that darkness, and we're coming out of the darkness. We have the sparkle from his eye, like that glint from his eye, that becomes a flashlight beam. And this is Judith and the guy. Why can't I remember his name? Frank. It's Frank. It's them on their separate route, and Judith is not taking things super seriously. She kind of asks Frank if he wants to, turn the lights out and maybe have a little fun in the darkness, which he, of course, obliges because, he's a man. Of course, he's going to want to screw around in a new place. But again, they turn everything out. We go into the darkness. And at first, things, feel nice. We're getting those oohs and ahs. But those last two panels, pure darkness, no sound. What is the implication there? And then we come out of the darkness, and it's John who's waking up. And, oh boy, he's chained by the neck in a pit with some cool statues, some gargoyles hanging over him. This is, again, where I'm talking about Totleben drawing really cool, like, carvings and stuff. I don't know how well it's going to show up on the camera, but there's a lot of like little squiggle detail in all of these statues. We have a really cool throne in the background. Those bricks around the pit all have their own unique design. Like it's not all just copied and pasted. Really cool stuff. John has been captured by the Brujeria. And we got the letters page on the centerfold. I don't know how to feel about that. I know I do. I don't like it. Put art here. This is your centerfold. When someone buys this comic book, they flip it over to the center. You want them to see art, not a freaking letters page. But anyway, I think this page is a really interesting layout because these three panels up here, if you look at it quickly, you don't realize that they do extend all the way down here. So you have I guess the head of the Brujeria who's explaining to Constantine what trouble he's in, and they explain to him that it's a hopeless situation for you. You know, your friend, the Swamp Thing, can't get in here. There's no plant life for him to latch onto. You know, you're screwed. John starts to say, like, no, look, I'm not alone. But unfortunately, he is. So we get Judith's legs at the pit framing John, and it's revealed that she has turned heel. She's made a deal with the Brujeria because she was attacked by the Invunch, and it was either join them or die. And she reveals that, I mean, she goes fully into it. Like, she mentions not only has she joined them, but she says she killed Cox and his mother, and she killed Frank, because in her hands there is a wrapped ball looking thing, and that's his head. That's Frank's head. Splish right into the pit with Constantine. John tells her, like, look, they're tricking you. Women can't join the Brujeria. She says, no, like, I know I can't be a full member, but they're gonna turn me into a bird, which I guess is something that she wants. Strange. But she talks about how she'll still be able to be part of this new universe that they're creating. They're brewing it right now. Like, they have these guys that are, you know, swirling around this white mass, and she explains that the fear, uncertainty, and belief in the supernatural, which will precipitate the event, are at their peak. They're distilling the essence now from all the old men's anxieties and women's dreads and children's nightmares. So this is what everything's been building towards. So the vampires, the zombies, the werewolves, it was all in pursuit of bumping up people's beliefs in these nightmares to make this essence stronger. It's a little weird. I don't know. I don't know that, like, visually this works, or if, like, this is the way that I would have done this, but I don't know how I would have done it differently. It just, like, I don't know. It rings a little bit weak to me. But the last loose end for Judith is John, and so those gargoyles around his pit start spewing gross-looking muddy water into that. Meanwhile, she disrobes because the process to turn her into a bird is about to begin. And apparently this is very important to the ritual. Once she completes her transformation, that's when, like, things get really, really bad. Like, this needs to be stopped. She eats this root that the witches give her, and it shrivels up her entire body, leaving only her head. Ugh, nightmare stuff. So the head is still conscious because the head is undergoing the transformation. But meanwhile, what fell off her head? That flower she picked out of the rainforest earlier. And there is the door for Swamp Thing. The flower roots touch the ground. He's able to get a hold of it. And as the Brujeria instruct the head on how to grow its own legs to become a bird, Swamp Thing grows his legs and invades their lair. And boop, there he is. He's not happy. They call the Invunch to attack. Swamp Thing faces off against him. Meanwhile, John is screaming, "Don't worry about that. Don't worry about me. You have to stop what's happening with Judith right now. You can't let her become a bird. That's really, really bad." But Swamp Thing, a little bit too much humanity left in him. He can't let John just drown in this water. He goes and he saves him. And unfortunately, the process is complete. Judith is now a crow. Really like this panel. This reminds me a lot of, like, Bernie Wrightson's original Swamp Thing. Like, there's a issue number 1 where he's kind of coming out of the water, and we've got these kind of splashes, the water pulling, like, with his arm coming out. And I did a video on Bernie Wrightson's trading card artwork where I point out this same pattern used in his in some of his drawings there. But John is, annoyed at Swamp Thing. He says, "The idiot, the big stupid idiot, he saved me. He let them change Judith, and he saved me. Now the bird's flown, and the message is on its way, and the bad luck will take us all, each and every one of us, all on a one-way losing streak." The crow becomes darkness again, and that darkness becomes the black streak in Abby's white hair. And this is an immediate fallout from the previous issue. The candid, saucy photographs of her and Swamp Thing have made it into the paper, and she shows up to work, and her boss is very cold to her, turns her over to the police who are there to speak to her. What charges? Kind of unclear at this time. They're just like, hey, you're disgusting. You're having sex with some kind of either swamp monster or a guy in a suit that looks like a swamp monster. Either way, this is messed up. You're going to jail. You gotta charge her with something. Like indecency, but like who? I don't know. I don't know about that. But anyway, Abby's taken away by police, and that is the end of the issue. Next up, the summoning. So that is Swamp Thing number 48. Let me know your thoughts about this issue in the comments below. Let me know if there's anything that I missed that should have been pointed out. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.